Welcome to Tattletale. Here's today's story, When the Rain Stopped Falling. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Not the kind of angry, thunder-punctuated downpour that made headlines and power outages. No, this was the soft, persistent type. The kind that soaked through your coat without realizing, the kind that made the world look like it was melting at the edges. Julian Carrick watched it from behind the triple-pane window of his office at the National Weather Institute. He didn't mind rain. In fact, he preferred it. Rain didn't lie. It told you it was coming. It left signs, the air thick with petrichor, the shifting of the clouds, the pressure drop. You could trace it, predict it, explain it. People were Messier. He was staring at a wall of real-time precipitation maps on his monitor when he noticed her for the first time. Down on the street, across from his building, a pop-up art booth was setting up. Who even sold art in this kind of weather? The woman was trying to secure a blue tarp over her setup, her arms flailing in a kind of graceful panic. Her umbrella had blown inside out, and her soaked red scarf clung to her like ivy. Julian blinked. She wasn't just standing in the rain. She was painting in it. No one else seemed to notice her, which made him watch longer. She dipped a brush into what looked like watercolor and stroked across a canvas under the tarp. Rain pooled around her boots, and the wind tugged at her easel, but she was calm. Steady, like she was built for this exact kind of storm. For some reason, Julian reached for his phone and snapped a photo through the window. Her name was Evie. He didn't learn that until 3 days later, after he passed the art booth on the way to lunch and hesitated long enough to seem like he had a purpose. She smiled, nodded at him, then handed him a laminated card. "Hi, I'm Evie. I'm deaf, but I love painting what I hear. Feel free to browse. I also read lips fairly well." Smiley face. Julian read it twice, then once more. Evie. She was barefoot now. The pavement was dry for the first time in days, and the puddles had retreated, but she still painted like the storm had never stopped. Her paintings were abstract yet haunting. Blues and silvers, streaks of dark like cloud fractures. Each one felt deliberate. "You paint what you hear?" Julian asked aloud, then winced. Obviously, she couldn't hear him. Idiot. But she looked up from her palette and watched his mouth carefully. Then she nodded, smiled, and wrote something on a small notepad. "I imagine sound. How it might look." Julian stared at that for a second too long. "Do you ever paint silence?" She tapped her brush on the pad before writing. "Always. It's the loudest." Julian didn't mean to come back the next day, or the next, but he did. He brought coffee, though he wasn't sure if she drank it. He found himself talking more, even though he wasn't sure what stuck. Evie smiled often, tilted her head when she was curious, and wrote responses when the moment called for it. He asked her once, during a quiet Thursday drizzle, why she painted outside so often. She replied on paper, "Rain doesn't interrupt. It listens." That line stuck with him for days. Their first real date wasn't planned. Julian invited her to the observation dome on the Institute's rooftop. He had clearance, and no one else ever used it. She climbed the stairs carefully, her coat too big, her hair in a loose braid. When she saw the dome's 360 degrees view, her eyes lit up. He showed her how to read the radar monitors, how the pressure systems danced across the atmosphere like invisible giants. She traced them with her fingers like constellations. She painted him a picture that night, swirls of dark blue and white, a soft streak of orange near the bottom. She titled it Before the Thunder. They kissed in the middle of a fog bank. He'd taken her upstate to watch the meteor shower, but the sky had blanketed over just before midnight. Disappointed, he turned to apologize for the wasted trip, but she smiled like the fog had done her a favor. The kiss was quiet, soft. She leaned in like she was listening to something only he could hear. He didn't notice her cough at first, just a small sound, stifled behind a sleeve or masked by the sound of traffic. But then he realized. He was hearing her coughs more and more. She looked tired. The colors in her painting dulled. Her hands trembled when mixing watercolors. One night, when he brought over dinner, she passed out before even tasting it. He called the ambulance. Her skin was clammy, her breath uneven. The doctor spoke to him in a low, hesitant tone outside her hospital room. Stage 4. Aggressive. She might have known for a while. "I'm sorry." Julian couldn't remember the ride home. Just the steady beat of rain on the windshield, relentless and uncaring. Evie wrote less after that. But when she did, it was poetry. She gifted him her last full canvas 2 weeks later. It was painted entirely in muted grays and subtle golds. The center was blank. She'd written the title on the back, "When the Rain Stops." He started showing up at the bookstore more often after that. At first, it was every couple of days, always with a book in hand, always with a quiet smile that asked for nothing. She'd glance up from the register, and there he'd be, pretending to browse. Sometimes he bought something, sometimes he didn't, but he always left with a soft "see you." And she'd always feel her breath catch just a bit as the bell above the door jingled behind him. Then came the Saturday when he didn't pretend to browse. He walked straight up to her, leaned on the counter like he had every right to belong in her quiet world, and asked, "Would it be too much if I asked what your favorite book is?" She blinked at him. "You don't strike me as someone who reads romantic poetry," she replied, half teasing. "Try me." So she handed him a slim, worn copy of Neruda's 20 love poems and a Song of Despair. He ran his fingers over the cover like it meant something already. "I'll bring this back," he said. "You'll probably forget I even borrowed it." But she didn't. When he came back the next week, he quoted a line to her in a low voice that made her feel like the words weren't Neruda's anymore, like he had lived them. She told herself it didn't mean anything. The way his eyes lingered too long, the way his voice softened around her name. But he kept coming, rain or shine. Even when he looked tired, even when he didn't buy anything, he came. And she began to count on that. One Thursday, while she was restocking the poetry shelf, she felt his presence before she saw him. He knelt down beside her silently, pulling a book from the bottom shelf. "You always shelve them in the same order," he said, "because they belong together." He glanced at her. Do people belong together? It was a strange question, too heavy for the hour. But he asked it like it was natural, like it had been sitting on the edge of his tongue for days, just waiting for her to be close enough. She didn't answer. Instead, she stood and walked back to the counter, heart pounding in her chest. She knew how stories like this ended. She had read enough of them to know that sometimes a look could mean everything, and sometimes it could mean absolutely nothing at all. That night, she found herself staring at the ceiling, thinking about him, about his hands, the way they held books like something fragile, about his laugh, rare but real, and the ache in his voice when he read from Neruda. She hated how he made her feel like a character in someone else's story. By the time autumn rolled in, he had become part of her routine. They didn't call it anything. They didn't need to. He would bring coffee sometimes. She would dog-ear poems for him. They existed in the margins of each other's lives, neither of them daring to write their names into the main plot. Until one day, she asked without thinking, "Why do you really come here?" He looked at her, startled, then down, then back up again. "Because this is the only place I don't feel like I'm disappearing." Something cracked open inside her. She knew that feeling, that silent erosion, the fear that one day, no one would remember who you were, or if you mattered at all. She whispered, "I don't want to be forgotten either." And that was the moment everything shifted. He touched her hand, lightly, carefully, like asking permission. She didn't pull away. The air between them felt different after that. Thicker, quieter, like something unspoken had bloomed and neither of them could find the words to explain it. And maybe they didn't need to. Not yet. The coffee was lukewarm now, untouched for over an hour. Layla had her fingers wrapped around the ceramic mug more for comfort than taste. Her eyes stayed on the last message from Rowan. "You really think this was all just timing?" She didn't know what she thought anymore. A week passed in silence. It wasn't anger that kept them apart. It was fear. Fear that saying the wrong thing would make the wound worse. That trying to fix what broke would only shatter the pieces further. Layla went to work, came home, and avoided the park bench. Rowan didn't reply, didn't show up, didn't try again. And maybe that's what she hated most, that he didn't try harder. Then came Sunday. Layla was walking out of the bookstore with a secondhand copy of a Murakami novel when she nearly bumped into someone at the corner. Her heart jumped at the thought it might be him, but it wasn't. Just a stranger, carrying roses. She smiled politely and kept walking. But around the next corner, her phone buzzed. It was him. "I'm leaving this week. For good. Just wanted to say goodbye properly. I'll be at the lighthouse at sunset. You don't have to come. I just needed you to know." She stared at the message for a long time. The lighthouse was nearly 2 hours away. She didn't think. She ran, ditching the cab halfway due to traffic. She sprinted the last leg along the narrow dirt path leading to the cliffs. Her breath burned in her lungs as the sea wind howled, the lighthouse a silhouette against the melting sky. And there he was, sitting on the fence facing the... She hesitated. I don't know. I haven't figured it out. He nodded. He didn't want to ask the next question, but it pushed through anyway. And you? Still married? She flinched like he'd slapped her. No, not for a while now. Ian swallowed. I didn't know. It's not something I broadcast. Silence. Celia shifted. Can we talk? Somewhere. They walked to a small park nearby. The same one where he kissed her on the forehead years ago before they left for different cities. It hadn't changed. Same benches. Same fountain with chipped paint. Same air that somehow held their history. They sat side by side, a healthy distance apart. It wasn't what I thought it would be, she said, after a long silence. Marriage. New York. That life. I tried to believe in it. Tried to be the kind of person who could be happy with predictable routines and fancy brunches. And him? Ian asked. He tried too, but we were both playing parts. It just took us years to admit it. He didn't want to feel comforted by her confession, but he did, and that scared him. And you? She asked, turning toward him slightly. Did you ever find anything? I tried. Dated around. Nothing stuck. I guess I kept looking for something I already lost. She looked away, blinking fast. I thought, he continued, voice low, I could hate you. Or forget you. That time would sand off the edges. But even when I did stop loving you, I still missed you. She exhaled shakily. I wanted to call. So many times. But what could I say? That I made a mistake? That I left the best thing I ever had for something I couldn't even name? Ian looked straight ahead. You said you didn't want a life half-lived. I understood that. I think I misunderstood what full meant, she said quietly. He finally turned to her. Then what now? I don't know, she said honestly. I didn't come back expecting anything. He nodded. That's probably for the best. But then her fingers touched his. Lightly, uncertainly, the same way she had touched him the very first time they sat in this park together. He didn't pull away. They sat like that until the sky began to turn orange, the silence between them neither heavy nor empty, just full of things too fragile to name. And though neither said it aloud, both knew that something in them still moved toward the other, quietly, cautiously, like waves returning to the shore after a storm. But whether the tide would stay or pull away again, neither could say. Not yet. She didn't want to see him. She told herself that every time her phone buzzed and she saw his name, every time the ache in her chest clawed its way up her throat, every time she caught her reflection looking like a ghost of the woman she used to be. But the truth? She wanted to see him more than she wanted to breathe. Eli had stopped texting after that last message. I'll be there at noon. If you don't want to see me, just don't come. That was 3 days ago. Now it was almost noon. Claire stood at the edge of the sidewalk by the art museum, the same one they'd visited during their first trip to the city, hands clasped tightly then, hearts brimming with possibility. The overcast sky today mirrored her mood. Gray, weighted, undecided. She told herself this wasn't forgiveness. This wasn't forgetting. It was simply closure. That's what she needed, right? A final goodbye. Something real, not torn over the phone, not shattered over texts. Something face-to-face. Something to prove that the love had been real, even if it didn't survive. When she spotted him through the drizzle, her breath caught. He looked smaller than she remembered. Not physically, emotionally, like someone who had been carrying guilt so long it had folded him inward. The stubble, the wrinkled button-down, the red in his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't been sleeping. She wondered if that was because of her. Claire didn't wave. He spotted her anyway. The way his posture straightened, the way his expression dropped all pretense. That was the Eli she remembered. The one who looked at her like she was the only real thing in the world. They stood under the overhang of the museum entrance, a wall of rain between them and the rest of the city. Hey, he said softly. Claire didn't reply right away. Her arms were crossed, more for armor than warmth. I didn't think you'd come, he added. I almost didn't, she admitted. He gave a small, broken laugh. That makes two of us. There was silence then. Heavy, awkward, meaningful. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry, Eli said. Not the kind of sorry people throw around, but real. I know I broke something in you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. Claire swallowed. You could have told me that things weren't working, that you were confused, that you wanted someone else. I didn't want her, Eli said quickly. Not the way I wanted you. She was convenient, Claire finished. You felt trapped with me, pressured. So you let your fears decide for you. Eli didn't deny it. That, at least, was honest. I let my worst instincts win, he said, and I've been regretting it ever since. Claire, you were my best friend. My home. You were everything good in me. She looked away, biting her lip hard enough to taste blood. I've been trying to move on, she whispered. Trying to pretend like you didn't wreck me. But I can't even look at a stupid coffee cup without thinking about you. And it sucks, because I hate what you did. But I hate not having you more. That broke him. She could see it in the way his face crumbled, the tears welling in his eyes, the way he stepped forward like he might collapse from the weight of his own guilt. But I'm not here to take you back, she added quickly. Don't get that twisted. He stopped mid-step. I just needed to see you. One last time, before I put you behind me for real. Eli nodded slowly, eyes locked on hers, as if memorizing every freckle, every scar, every shadow of the girl he used to love. Do you remember the painting? He asked after a long moment. Claire blinked. What? The one you stared at for 10 minutes during our first visit here. The couple on the train platform. You said it reminded you of us. She remembered. God, how clearly she remembered. A man and a woman, hands almost touching, eyes full of things unsaid. The train behind them about to pull away. Yeah, she said softly. I remember. Eli gave her a bittersweet smile. I think we were always them. Even from the start. Claire's throat tightened. She felt like that girl on the platform now. Not quite holding on, not quite letting go. The rain had begun to soften into a mist. Goodbye, Eli. His jaw trembled. Claire, don't. She held up a hand. Let's not ruin this moment with hope. This isn't a beginning. It's an end. He nodded, but it looked like it took everything in him not to chase after her as she turned and walked away. She didn't look back. Not once. And in that act, in that small defiance, Claire found the first step to healing. Letting go didn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes, it just meant choosing yourself, even if it broke your heart. The room was quiet, filled only by the subtle hum of traffic outside the window and the occasional chirp of birds on the sill. Adrian sat on the edge of their shared bed, fingers laced, head bowed low. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was thick, heavy, almost accusing. He had returned to an apartment that no longer felt like home. Her scent lingered on the sheets. Her books were still aligned on the shelf, her shoes neatly placed by the door. But Emma herself was gone. The letter she'd left on the dining table hadn't said much, just that she needed space, that she was going back to Boston to be with her mother for a while, that she hoped he would understand. Understand what, though? That she couldn't keep waiting? That the weight of their past was too much to carry? He reached for his phone for the 100th time, but again, there were no new messages. No missed calls. No sign that she'd even thought of him since walking out the door 3 days ago. Every memory of her was sharpened now by absence. Her laugh during rainy mornings when they'd stayed in bed late. Her quiet concentration when sketching on her tablet. The way her hand fit into his like it was molded to be there. And worse, the argument. The last night they had together. He had begged her to stay. She had begged him to listen. They'd both cried, but neither had backed down. I can't be the only one fighting for this, she'd said, voice trembling. I love you, Adrian. But love isn't enough when it keeps hurting. He'd promised to do better. She had only smiled, kissed his cheek, and whispered, I wish I believed you. Now, that kiss burned against his skin like a bruise. Her suitcase had been already packed that night. He just hadn't noticed. 3 more days passed. Adrian went to work like a ghost, barely speaking, barely eating. At night, he walked by the harbor where they used to sit after dinner, tracing her laughter in the wind. Her favorite bench, third from the edge, was still there, but she wasn't. Then one night, as he sat there staring at the dark water, a voice broke the stillness behind him. You always hated the cold. Adrian turned. Emma stood a few steps away, her hands tucked into the sleeves of her oversized coat. Her hair was pulled back, and her eyes. God, her eyes looked tired. I didn't come to stay, she said before he could speak. I just came to tell you goodbye properly. The words struck like ice in his lungs. I thought you left because you needed space, he said softly. I did. But in that space, I realized I've been holding on to someone who doesn't know how to let go of his past. I tried, Em. I really tried. I know, she said, stepping closer. But trying isn't healing. And I can't keep being a placeholder for someone you lost. He stood, searching her eyes. You were never a placeholder. She blinked hard. Then why did I always feel like I was competing with a ghost? Silence. He looked down, unable to lie. Because maybe I never let myself believe I deserved you after her.